By the 1960s, the NPS had followed two paths toward creating a national historical park in Boston. McCormick had laid out the first with his Dorchester Heights scheme, and then the Boston National Historic Sites Commission set down a second path with Edwin Small's report. It was that plan that became the focus of a legislative campaign by Tip O'Neill and Ted Kennedy to make the park a reality in Boston. Now, they hadn't made much progress when two bits of news suddenly sent the whole park planning process down yet another path toward authorization. First, it was in 1968 that Bostonians learned that the federal government would shut down its historic naval shipyard in Charlestown. Second, just 2 years later, news spread that Boston had lost its bid to host the nation's upcoming Bicentennial celebration. Now, though seemingly unrelated, these two events were bound up in Boston with all kinds of fears about the economy. Urban renewal, it turns out, had not really ended up being the cure-all that its boosters had hoped for. And what's more, the onset of post-war deindustrialization created a job crisis, typified and intensified by the looming shutdown in Charlestown. So, faced with these twin dilemmas, the Boston Redevelopment Authority floated a plan. Why not create a bicentennial-themed National Historical Park, and I'm quoting now, with a Naval Marine Museum on the site of Charlestown Navy Yard? The Boston Globe loved this. It predicted that a new national park that included the Navy Yard would, quote, be an enormous fillip to Boston's Freedom Trail. Everyone, in fact, seemed to love the new plan, especially because it promised to create new jobs and create the infrastructure needed to capitalize on tourist dollars during the bicentennial. Everyone loved the idea, that is, except the National Park Service. The NPS, of course, had never considered the possibility of including a 19th century Navy Yard in a park dedicated to the Revolution. A few preliminary studies predicted exorbitant costs to do it, and nobody within the agency believed that anything productive could be done with the Navy Yard in time for the bicentennial. And yet, political pressures mounted. Kennedy went ahead and drafted the legislation for this new park concept. The Park Service, however, held its ground, and in its official report, the Department of Interior opposed the legislation. It was really an incredible moment. After 30 years of advocating for a national park in Boston, the NPS now found itself in the position of having to prevent that park from getting made. As one of its representatives explained to Congress during the hearings, and I quote here, "What we are doing is unfairly raising expectations in the minds of the citizens of Boston that we can't fulfill." The appeal fell on deaf ears. On October 1st, 1974, Congress authorized establishment of the Boston National Historical Park, encompassing sites relevant to the Revolutionary past in downtown Boston and significant portions of the old Charlestown Navy Yard. The Navy Yard got its own budget line, but with $8 million less than what the NPS estimated would be necessary to get the site up and running in time for the bicentennial.